That's great. Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. So we're going to start off tonight. If anybody ever has any questions, go ahead and throw it in the chat. We want to make this a conversation, as Linda said. First question I want to ask Taylor. Taylor, you graduated in 2018 with a finance degree. You're new to the market relatively, and compared to Mike. With that, and how COVID has hit the United States, how has it affected you professionally and personally, and what have you learned? What are the silver linings through this process?
So because I've been doing banking for over 2.5 years now, I wasn't, from like a career development perspective and like a learning curve perspective, I wasn't hit as badly as someone who was like, we have first year analysts now who started in August, which was obviously during COVID. And so that development period for the first 6 to 8 months on the desk is really crucial to just like your trajectory and your success in banking. And I think like any more technical job, because there's nothing that can really replicate you being in an office environment surrounded by your peers where you're learning real time, watching them do what they do. I just think you like pick up on things faster and you learn quicker in that type of environment. And so I will say I am, because I kind of learned the ropes and I'd already been doing it for 2 years. It wasn't as impactful for me, but I did transition into my associate role during this time, which has been a little bit more of a challenge because I'm trying to elevate myself in basically the hierarchy of like investment banking teams is difficult, and just kind of finding your way in that and then taking on my new role effectively. But I have been just networking with a lot of people in the firm and asking like transition associates and like MBA associates how they went about making sure they were seen as an associate in the eyes of people above them, especially if they've started out as an analyst. So I think that's something that I've been struggling with the most, or just trying to like wrap my head around and work on. Now, I would say, sorry, your question was like, what were some challenges or like just some silver linings too, right? Okay. I guess the silver lining in this is that I did decide to move home. Basically, starting in March of 2020, I decided to move home to be with my family in Orange County, which is just an hour away of where I lived in LA. And it has been like a beautiful time to be with my family, because as a young 20-year-old out of college, usually you're in another state from your family, or you're just living with roommates and apartments and whatnot. And so being able to come home and spend time with my family, and then be here with my sister too. She's currently in business school right now. But that, I guess, is like a once in a lifetime opportunity that I wouldn't have had if everything was just normal. So I would say I am really grateful for that. And I've found a little bit more time to like more me time, I guess, because I gained time from commuting and whatnot. And so I have a little bit more time to work out, which I've been happy about. And just like little things throughout the day where I can step away from my personal desk and like do things that keep my mental health and just like more me time. So I guess that's like another silver lining too.
That's great. Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah, you graduated in 2006 at the height of the housing bubble, right before the financial crisis. Mm-hmm. What lessons did you learn coming out of college that have prepared you to handle the financial distress that we're in now with the COVID pandemic?
Well, what's so amazing is that, yes, 2006 I graduated. I've made my two biggest career choices at the worst timing in any history that you could do that. So I decided to go on commission only and be badass broker in fall of 2008, which was a story in itself. And then this March, the week before all businesses shut down, I started a new company. So, but I think that God's hand in that was so amazing, because like I didn't know what I didn't know. And so for my first example in 2008, I knew I loved the real estate business after working for 18 months in a research role. I knew that's what I wanted to do forever. And at that time too, you got to remember I was older. I was probably 23, 24. So like those first few years out of college, I had a lot of people like getting married and going to Notre Dame. They were all over the country. I had zero. I was paid $24,000 out of college. And so I had no money. So I was like, I want to do this. I have grit and fight and drive in me. And so I got a second job that I worked nights and weekends, like at just a retailer, just to be able to like pay for the wedding shower gift or whatever. And so that taught me a lot about myself. And it also like, I have like older brokers who are like in their 60s that I used to like babysit for just for extra money. And they were like, God, like, we respect you so much. Cause I can't believe, a lot of times in real estate, when a bust happens, half the people get out of the business. And so they still will come back to me and be like, I can't believe like you babysat for us and you did your job. And so that taught me a lot about myself. But then on the business side, I used that time to get extremely organized, like with all and build relationships with different types of users or buyers or retailers, because it's, cyclical. It's always going to come back around. So, I just got super organized. And when it was go time again, I was like way ahead of the curve. That was like the first in 06 to 010 or to 2010. And then this time we started a new company, COVID hits, and, our tenants or our retailers that we represent, like a ton of them are restaurants, and, they were reaching out for us to help them on rent reductions and things like that. But it was also a really good time for us to kind of pause and get organized in our business and, kind of explore like, where do we want to take this and what do we want to do? And so that was kind of from more of like an introspective way to kind of press pause instead of like, oh, we're starting a new company and off we go and what's happening. From the business side, what was really amazing was opportunities just end up like there's restaurants, Sweet Tomatoes. They didn't make it, they had 3 locations in Houston, and I was able to put together a deal. And it was just perfect timing for In-N-Out to be in one of their locations. And so it's like, while some people go, oh, there isn't anything happening, I'm going to go lay on the couch and binge on Netflix. It's like, no, you got to be like on it. And even if it's going this way, you get opportunities in an up time and in a downtime. So just like remembering to stay kind of focused and on it.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Linda, you graduated in 2009, nearing the end of this financial crisis and coming out of it. What have you learned there that if you could go back and teach yourself lessons and teach us seniors that are just starting to enter the job market? How do we approach an economy like this when we're trying to discern and figure out what careers we want to follow?
Sure. Before I answer that, can I just real quick, for those of you who are on video, are you all finance majors? Raise your hand if yes. Do you all know what you want to do yet or have an idea? Raise your hand if yes. Okay, so a couple do. Are you guys like, are you mostly juniors, sophomores? Do you know Josh or Linda?
I have a couple classmates in here, so this is probably senior, junior dominated.
Okay, raise your hand if you're not a senior. And are you guys juniors? Yes or no? No? Younger over here? Oh, yeah, some younger? Okay, cool. I just was trying to get an idea of like where you guys are at in the career discernment. So 2009, so I interned in 08, which was awesome. And I, busted my ass. I worked this recorded, huh? Sorry, Linda. I will not say another bad word. I worked really hard, and Goldman basically told me at the end of it, we really like you, but we don't even know if we're going to be able to hire people. We might be on a headcount freeze because of the financial crisis. And that was devastating to me because I really wanted to go back full time. I went through the interview process with other firms, and it was just like blah, because I knew I didn't really want to work there. And I really wanted to be at Goldman. I was really lucky that they did have headcount and I came back full time. But I'd say for my advice for you guys, when you're in the job, it's just like listening and absorbing, because there was complete craziness going on during the internship and the job. But to get the job, you guys have to network. You just have to do it because it's so competitive. Like the number of emails I get in a given week from students, and I'm not even just talking about my own alumni or my own alma mater students. I'm talking about students from any college, anywhere, that are just aggressive, reaching out on LinkedIn or tracking down emails, is insane. I probably on average get at least 2 a week all year long, regardless if it's hiring time or not. So it's so important that if you think you want to be somewhere, whether it be Goldman or in the real estate world or whatever it is, you proactively go out of your comfort zone a little bit and network with these people, because at the end of the day, even if you're a 4.0 student or whatever, and you are the star of your team, there's hundreds of other kids who look like that, unfortunately. So part of it is luck, but part of it is just getting out there to network, and not just the first initial outreach, but following up with these people. Because you want them when there is an opening, if there isn't right now, to your point, Josh, about, where the economy's at, you want them as soon as there is an opening to be like, oh, Joseph Hunt. Oh yeah, let's call Joseph. He's been emailing me for 2 years, or whoever it is. But otherwise you just kind of get lost. You send one email and it's like, oh, there was a kid, I can't remember where he went to school or what it was. But if you just put on an alert and ping them once a quarter, super short and sweet. Don't send them an essay. They're busy. They don't have time for it. Super short and sweet. What's going on? Any classes, sports, whatever you're doing. Guess what? After a year, they've got 4 emails from you and they know who you are now. It's not just, oh, there's a Notre Dame kid. It is exactly that. It's, oh, Joe Hunt. He emailed me again. Hey, there's an opening. I should call Joe. Let's see if it works out. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, but that is probably my 2 best advices for figuring out things in general. But even when the economy is slow, is number 1, showing up, which you guys have all done. And I think Taylor is like a prime example of that. When we had that Monogram lunch, she showed up. She's the only one who showed up. And look at, she came and interned at Goldman. I said, she's awesome. Let's get her at Goldman. And we're lucky to have her. But also, who knows if she didn't show up that day. And then 2 is follow up, because there are more people who show up. But if you take it the next step further and follow up, you're going to make progress. I don't know. Does that answer your question a little bit? Okay.
That was great. Thank you, Linda. And then I'm going to transition now to Mike. Mike, we talked earlier, you said it took you 10 years to try to figure out what direction you were actually going in, and with that career discernment process. What mistakes did you make? What adversity did you go through that you could change? And kind of banking on Linda's answer, what could you have done to reach out to other companies to make yourself more valuable and find yourself?
Yeah, and I think it wasn't there's a couple points to that, Josh, and thanks for the question. The first point is you're going to have success where you want to be, and culture of the people that you work with is going to dictate a good portion of your adaptability and your rise within the organization. So when you do put together these offers and you have 3 or 4 of them, and somebody's $500 higher than the other one, if it doesn't feel right, first of all, it's not you won't miss the $500 over the 40 years. I'm telling you that right now. So you have to go a little bit with your instinct as to where you think you're going to be successful. That's point 1. Point 2 is no one on this call or no one in your life is going to manage your career other than you. They will manage a job for you, and it'll be in their enlightened self-interest, myself included. I have a team of 57 people, and I love them all dearly. And yeah, I selected each and every one of them, but they are they have to manage their own careers. I'll think about them, and part of my part-time job is to make sure I put them in positions where they can be successful at other places within the organization. But I've got a business to run, and I've got great people that I think are doing it right now. So you have to manage your own career. You have to know where you want to go, and you need to think about it. And I did spend the first 10 years of my career in kind of like just chasing what the next job would be, and it wasn't very productive. And then I stumbled into a part of the finance world called asset-based lending that I wound up being really successful at because I got it. And the interplay between me and the people that I was around, and I had the great bosses that I communicated well with, and they put me in positions to win. You guys have a lot to offer. You have a great Notre Dame career, but an education, but you're also, you're coachable. That's where you're athletes. You've time managed, and you've got you're team orientated. There's a lot of great things to say about what you've got. But some of the earlier comments that were made are just terrific as to how you're going to want to present yourself. And I love the quarterly ping back. I think that's terrific.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And now to Sara again. What can student athletes do to set themselves apart at their first job or internship? How we talked that everybody has that 4.0 athlete status. Maybe not me.
Yeah, sure.
With the 4.0. But how do we set ourselves apart in an internship or job to be noticed by everybody else in the company?
Sure. Well, after the interview, follow-up is like super key. So we could just start there. But I think like what you got, I didn't have an internship until after my junior year as well. And sometimes I felt like, man, I'm missing the boat, because now people are probably interning in kindergarten the way our world works these days, but it's like, you feel so far behind, and like, God, how do I put on my resume that I played ball all summer and then did 6 weeks somewhere? But I want to encourage you guys to feel confident where you are and what you're doing, because you guys already possess the skills that are going to make you successful. I think, whether it's an internship or a job interview, you guys need to have, and I know that this is all like help with the Indy, the career center and everything, but it's like, you need to speak about your leadership skills, the discipline you had when you were, had to practice, after practice was over and my dad went and hit me more ground balls. I mean, those kinds of things are set you apart. Okay. And not only do you need to like say those things, but also you need to show up and do that when you're at that job. I hate to like go all anti-millennial on y'all, but like, you need to be the first people in the office and you need to be the last people to leave, because you're going to be in the office and that partner is going to walk in and, oh my God, the light's on, the coffee's brewing, like what's going on? And like, he or she is going to notice that you're there. Or if it's 5, 6 o'clock and like, ooh, your time's really up, but you have a broker scrambling to put together a tour book, offer a hand. What can I do? What do you need? How can I help? Because probably in all of these different scenarios where you have like, you work in teams, the next time somebody gets some big client that they need help managing, or, going on a pitch for something, they're going to think, God, who can I put on this, and who's going to be there? And you're again going to come first to mind. So that's invaluable. So their skills are already there. You just have to transfer them. And I love what Linda talked about at the beginning of this call, because that was something that I think of so many times, is like, we have this full chapter, we have a whole book, right? And of my life, my life from 1983 to 2006 was like getting to be alive and then playing softball. And it's like, oh my God, like now that's over, and it's like, yeah, it is over, but you're starting a new book, and everything that you learned, you just take and you start a new career with it. And so I think going back to like what can set you apart is showing off what you already have and talking about it and being confident in that. Because as somebody who mentors a lot of younger brokers now, and just hearing from people, I mean, God, my partner still's like, she's played softball at Notre Dame. I'm like, oh my God, that was so long ago. Like, can you stop? You know, but it's like, that resonates because people go, oh, she must be driven. She must work hard. She must, you know, and so be confident in those. And then when you land the internship, when you land the job, please work your ass off. Like, because I mean, yeah, you started an amazing book where you were on top. In order to get to and stay on top, you have to do the same thing.
Good stuff. Thank you, Sarah. Taylor, how did you start with internships and job shadows and that whole process with soccer? How did you manage it now? Now they have micro internships and different opportunities.
Josh, you mean like how I got to like networking to get my internship? Like
Absolutely.
Okay.
That, and how did you find time to be able to figure out what you did want to do and eventually get to Goldman?
Okay. So my first Notre Dame connection was Linda. And then I talked to this other guy. His name is Brent Breslau. He's not gone. And he was in private wealth management. And I was very interested in what they had to say about private wealth management, but I didn't know. Well, I knew of the other areas that you could work at a bank, but I didn't really know specifically in detail what the day-to-day entailed and like all these different job functions like you could work at a bank. So I asked Brent, I was like, do you know anyone who works in another division within Goldman? And so he basically just connected me to this guy. His name is Vince Van Guyver, and we have been friends ever since. We probably talk every quarter, but he was the first person I spoke to at Goldman who was in investment banking. And I just picked his brain. I asked him, he had done the internship at the time. He was a senior. And I just asked him what he did on a day-to-day basis. I asked him what he liked about the job. I asked him what he didn't like about the job. I asked him what kind of skills would be effective in being successful in banking. And from there, I just started. The most important thing I think you can do when you first decide the career you want to pursue is to just start talking to as many people in that career as possible. And so after I talked to Vince, I kept talking to more and more people. And so I basically built my book of contacts. And I think I had like 20 plus people who were Notre Dame alumni that worked at Goldman Sachs. And a lot of them were in New York, but I had this like huge network within the firm that were Notre Dame alumni that were advocates for me because they liked me and I talked to all of them and we had personal conversation. And I tried my best to be personable and I was just asking them questions I always came prepared with questions whenever I talked to them. And when the conversation was over, I was like, thank you so much for the time. Is there anyone else you have in mind that you think I could talk to that would be helpful? And so that was my strategy in building my network there. And so when it got time to interview, I did that. Goldman does a hire view first. So it's like a video interview. And really the only way you can notice and things like that is if people know your name. Like if people that you were talking to on the other end knew you and they talked to you and they liked you, they would basically pull you and then promote you into the super day. And so then I interviewed for the final round interview. And I am 100% confident that I wouldn't have gotten the job if it wasn't for my network behind the scenes, probably advocating for me. Like knowing the minute I was done with that 3-hour interview, all my Notre Dame alumni friends that worked at Goldman were probably talking to all the people that I just interviewed with, telling them that they liked, I hope they said this, that they liked me and they think I deserved a shot at the internship. So that was like, I'm pretty sure and I'm pretty confident that was my key to success. This happened all in my fall semester of my junior year, which is late now. Like now, if you want to get into investment banking and really any like job at a bank, you have to kind of start. Well, I guess you can start junior year. It's just like a little bit easier to figure that out a little bit earlier. I'm not trying to be discouraging on this call, but I was in season, and you take your time management skills that you learned from being a student athlete, and then you put it in SuperDrive, and you just find the time. You find the time to study the things you need to study. You find the time to study interview questions, and you make it a point of each of your days to schedule networking calls. And so there's really like no secret to that. It's just like you have to do the work, and you have to like just try to get your name out there and integrate yourself into like the professional world. And it's not like there's like more time in the day to do that. You just have to kind of find the time and maybe sacrifice or like allot time that you would allot to something else and bring it into your networking. So that's like, I guess that's my advice on that.
Great. Thank you, Taylor.
Can I add a couple things before I forget them? Just kind of going along, you spurred some thought in me, but like one thing is don't let not knowing what you want to do right now for your career not let you just make a decision and take a step. Because it's so unfortunate that we have all these pressures of like, oh, you have to say you want to be a doctor in 8th grade. It's like, that's not how life works. And most people probably the job they started is not what they ended up finding they had a passion for and love and do. So that was my kind of first thought. And like second thought is there's this whole, this is something I wish I would have done. There's this whole network out there of alumni all over the world. And if you think, gosh, this, and this sounds interesting, ask for a few alums for their contact info and pick their brain. Ask them what they do on a daily basis. Why do you like your job? Why is this fun for you? Ask whatever you want, but it's like, you also don't have to go pick a career, and you can at least have some thoughts on what does actually being a real estate broker mean, and I'm happy to be one of those people if you want to know more about real estate, but it's like, just, you have such a awesome, encyclopedia right there at Notre Dame. So use it and just pick people's brains. We love doing that kind of stuff.
Thanks, Sarah. Linda, you were the director of the Monogram Club for 5 years. What advice can you provide to these student athletes here of how to, use that resource and reach out to those that are alumnus, but also that played sports like we do?
I mean, again, I could just go back to showing up. Like, obviously, COVID puts a damper in things, but it is going to be over, guys, and things will resume to normal. And the Monogram board will have events, so show up for those, even if you can't stay the whole time. And by the way, our new, so Taylor's an example of one. Her twin sister also interned at Goldman in my group and worked there full time when she graduated. And then our new analyst on my team, or I guess he's just he's 6 months in, Jack Kane, was a cheerleader at Notre Dame and showed up from one of those Monogram luncheons, and we got him to come intern in my group at Goldman in LA. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's a layup, like if you just show up you can come work at Goldman with me, but it's kudos to them that they came. They were super impressive, and they should be at Goldman if that's where they want to be, but I would have never known who they were if they didn't show up. But it's not just Monogram. Like Matt and the Monogram group is incredible, don't get me wrong, but don't feel like that's the only group that you should be tapping when Sarah or Taylor or anybody talks about talking to alumni about what they do. Go. Now I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, but go to your academic advisor too. Use all your angles. Put as many fishing poles in the water as you can, because Sarah's point, you're not really going to know what you want to do, even when you start. I knew I wanted to work at Goldman in private wealth. I thought that's what I did. But even a year and a half in, I kind of was like, is this what I'm going to keep doing? Am I going to do something different? My 2-year kind of contract or whatever you start with is coming to an end soon. And I did all these informational interviews again with a ton of different people in different industries to see, do I want to keep focusing here or do something different? Ultimately, what I found from those was I wanted to stay where I was at. But anyways, the Monogram group is incredible. Go to their stuff, ask Matt, ask when you need connections to people. They'll get you in touch with the right folks, but don't feel like that's the only option for you to go to as an athlete.
Awesome. Thank you. Mike, in your time at Notre Dame back in 1981, what's something you think that you could have done a better job at to set yourself
work,
up?
School, studying, not going to Corby's. There were a lot of things that I could have done a lot better at, and I failed at most of them. But what I didn't fail at was making lifelong friends, and what I didn't fail at was understanding what the Notre Dame spirit was, and that commitment that the now 17 of us have to each other. I don't know who said before that they get 100 emails with resumes a year. I get 100 plus, but I make sure I answer each of the Notre Dame ones because they're part of our family. So what I would have done better is I wouldn't have wasted quite as much time learning how to play spades. So when you play your third card, I already know the other 10 cards in your hand. But I would have spent more time with the books, and I would have had a higher grade point average, and I would have been in a position where I could have talked to Goldman Sachs. But they didn't have anything for me. But I do want to make just to pile on though. I want to make a point about the interview process, because I do interview for our training program and our associates every year, and our analyst class, and then for the promotion to the associates. And I sit in on those interviews, and I'm quite active with it. Here's a couple of things. One, read the Wall Street Journal like on a regular basis. Take 5 minutes every morning and look at the opinion side and the what's news, and at least be conversant. So when somebody says something during the interview, you can talk about it. That's your job. That's part of your job. The second thing is if you know who the interviewer is the day before, ask for it. And a simple Google search or LinkedIn search will tell you something about the person that you're going to be sitting across the table from. And there's these conversations. From my standpoint, we have a format that we're working on, and each of us has a different tack that we want to go into on the interview. Be it, tell me something hard about a situation that you're in and how you got out of it. That might be my my underlying question in the process, and so we'll compare that to the other candidates. But to the extent that the candidate knows something about you and can ask something about what you're doing, what you've done, and do your homework on the company as well too. But when a candidate asks me, I have this niche little business. I mean, it's not little. We have $13 billion worth of loans, but it's a super segment, within the bank, and it's a niche business. It's asset-based lending. And when when a candidate sits in front of me and says, "Hey, can you tell me a little bit about that? I don't know anything about it." Well, at least I know they've already figured out that what I do. And that they've taken the time to look at me and to understand how I can be helpful to them. And it's really it's a differentiation point. And it's those type of things that set you apart, because when you get to these interviews, and they're very competitive today, I guess they were always competitive, but it sure seems they are very competitive. It's like mincing garlic. I mean, you are shaving this stuff really, really thin. And when we get in the room afterwards, tossing people out it's done dispassionately, and because you've just interviewed 40 people and you have 12 slots. Well, 28 people are going away really quick.
I guess a follow-up to that, Mike.
20 I'm sorry.
I guess a follow-up to that then would be how do we stand out in front of those 20 applicants that you're looking at, or the 40 interviews that you just go through? How, at the end of the day, how do you?
You do it by being on time, by having a firm handshake, by showing interest in what the person's doing, and having knowledge of what the program is, and having done your homework ahead of time. So you want to interview at BMO. Okay. Yeah. And during that process, you say that, oh, well, there's these other 12. Yeah. I just did a search through the Alumni Association, and here's the 12 people that work at BMO in Chicago in commercial lending, and say, and maybe have called one of them beforehand and said, hey, I'm going to be interviewing next week. And I'm is there anything I should know? Well, yeah, there will be things that you should know. Things that you should know about, what Ambition 25 is. You can know about what our commitment to diversity and inclusion is. You can know what our commitment to the United Way and what we stand for in Chicago is. And you can see that we've made acquisitions throughout the years, and that we're going to be acquisitive right now. There's a little bit of a commercial for BMO, but that's okay. But just by doing that, all of a sudden you're not in the pool with 40 anymore. You're now in a pool with 20, and it's all about improving your odds. And then you start to be in a position where you can make the choices as to, boy, is this someplace I want to work, rather than, boy, I need the job. And that's what I was talking about in my initial comments, that you're gonna want to be in a position where you pick, you pick where you want to work rather than you take what's offered. And I think that's just a huge difference. It's the difference between recruitment and selection. And I want that for all of you guys. And it's relatively easy for you guys to do if you do the hard work that goes with it. That's a ridiculous statement, and sounds like something a dad would say.
No, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking what you're saying is so simple, and like just a simple thing it makes a huge difference.
It just separates you. Like, and that's what you want. You want to be in the smaller pool. Yeah. You don't want to be in the big pool.
I was just going to add to that. I remember going to the career center to prep for interviews before I interviewed, and it was like a mock interview thing, and I kind of was like, oh, is this going to be a good use of time? It was so valuable to me because it helped me structure things, like just a few little key takeaways, like even at the end of the interview, like recapping why I think I'd be good at the job, and just like basically like how to sell yourself instead of just like, I know you can prep all the questions that they probably have, like these are probably questions people ask and you can prepare them, but actually being concise so that the interviewer remembers you, instead of like, you could have said a ton of good things, but you ramble and you didn't repeat, your things. And so let me repeat, this is the 3 reasons or whatever. So I would try to go to their career center to prep when you do have an interview. And I just also wanted to say, like, part of this, by the way, is you should be confident in who you are and you should own it. So don't worry if you don't know all the answers. Like I'm like in sales. So you can say like at the end, like, I don't know all the answers. Like I was late to the game. I didn't read the Wall Street Journal from freshman year. I started reading it 2 months ago when I figured out this is what I want to do. But I'll tell you what, I will bust my ass to be good. I might not know all the answers, but I'll know where to get them. And I wasn't a starter on the team that I'm on when I, came in, but I busted my ass in the weight room and I busted my ass here. And now I am a starter and I was voted team captain, or I don't know, whatever your story is, but you can say that with confidence and not feel like you don't, it's okay if you don't know where interest rates are and what the Fed's going to do this year and all that stuff. You don't have to feel like you know all that. When you get asked the question, you can say, I don't know. Here's what might make sense. And then, by the way, you can send them an email after when you go research it and look it up. But part of Taylor's thing about doing all the prep networking is because they are in the back saying, oh, we talked to her, so you should email the people you network with and say, hey, by the way, I just did my interview. I think it went well. But also because as you talk to them, you learn about the firm that you're interviewing with, culture and what they care about. So you also have that in mind when you're answering their questions, right? Does that make sense? You guys, some nodding a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Linda. Sarah, what is something that you think that you could have done better in your 4 years at Notre Dame?
I think about this a lot, actually. I think just we spent so much time, dawn to way late in the night, with your team and other athletes, whether y'all are eating at the same time because y'all finished practice or weights or whatever. I wish I would have figured out how. That part I don't know how, but it's like I wish I would have spread my wings a little bit with not just my team or other athletes. Like I wish I would have just spent more time networking with everybody I could have. It's not like a huge regret or anything. It's just like, man, where could those relationships have gone now, and whether it was for personal or like potential business or whatever. I mean, we have so many connections all over. It's like, I wish I would have spent more time outside of my athlete circle.
Thank you. And same thing for you, Taylor. I mean, recently you just graduated in the last couple of years. Maybe you haven't had time to think about it yet, being so busy going into
No, I've thought about it. I've definitely thought about it. So I tell people, I talk to a decent amount of people too who want to get into the investment banking profession. And the thing I tell people, I think like one of the most important things I tell people is that if you know you want to do something, so like if you know you want to follow a certain career path and you're lucky enough to know earlier rather than later, I think it's important to practice and expose yourself to as many technical aspects of that specific job. Because based off my experience, I was a really good student. I loved all the finance classes I took, and I did well in them. But like all of us, we had a sport to play, and so we dedicated so much time to our athletics. And I didn't necessarily have a ton of time to do things like SIBC or, just like these other like clubs on campus related to specifically to investment banking. And I knew all my peers when I was in school, a lot of my non-student athlete peers who didn't have that time commitment were doing these things outside of the classroom. And I think when they hit the job, it was such a smoother transition for them because they'd already practiced those things. Like they already had gotten reps into, I'm going to get a little technical here, but like building a DCF model or like doing all this different valuation analysis and things like that, because they were doing these case studies that replicate what you do in the job. And so when I first hit my internship, it was very difficult for me. I had all these intangible skills that we as student athletes have. Like I worked really hard. I was coachable. I was teachable. And so I picked up on things pretty quickly, but it was a very hard 8 weeks. And a lot of people started above me because they had dedicated at least a little bit of their time to practicing these like specific skills related to the job. And so what I tell people when I talk to them who just like wanting to get are interested in internships or like interested in full time is maybe if you don't have the time to do like maybe if you don't have time to commit to a full-on semester of like doing an SIBC project or something like that, try to do research on I don't know, like specific things related to the profession you're interested in, and try to get reps. Try to get reps in the technical piece of that, because I just think it's so invaluable once you get into your office environment, because the transition will be so much smoother and you'll start a little higher. So the learning curve isn't as steep for you, and then you just end up, overall, it's just like an easier transition, and I think a little bit more of an enjoyable time, because my internship was difficult and I had a huge like ramping up period in the first like 8 months. And it was a very trying time for me because I do work in a smaller office too in LA. And so it was kind of like you had to teach yourself. I mean, there's a lot of people willing to help you, but just from a sheer numbers game, you didn't have a ton of human resources around you to elevate your knowledge. And so you kind of had to do it yourself a little bit. So it was a lot. It was a very It was an invaluable experience for me, but I wish it would have been a little easier if I had just done the work, a little bit more work in college.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. And then in these last 6 minutes, kind of just want to go through final thoughts and closings. Mike, I'll start with you. Do you have anything left to say for this group here?
Yeah, be confident. And be confident in what, you have to fake it till you make it. What you have to, the whole thing. Employers are going to want everybody that's on this phone call, and they're going to. I'm telling you that right now. There is someone out there for you. So it's going to turn into a question as to what you want to do and where you want to go. And I just encourage everybody to open the aperture up, to think about things they may want to do. I thought Taylor's comments were spot on, and everybody's have been. But Taylor, when she talked about being, you don't want to be overwhelmed when you get to your first job, and so reach out to. It's all about confidence. There's not magic to a DCF. I mean, it's numerical. You just have to figure out what the inputs are, and then it'll work from there. But understanding how it's all put together is telling all. It's just telling. It's understanding the game as it's being played, and so I just want everybody to be confident. It's always been talked about, but you have a Notre Dame connection with everybody that's on this phone, and use it. And just be smart. But you're walking into something over this next year that's going to be the unknowns here. And I know we talked about it at the very beginning of the phone call, how difficult it has been for you guys in school, and how difficult it's been for people in their first couple of years in the job. It's unbelievable. And what I think that's really something that's I wish I could bottle it up with an explanation as to how we can get by it. But you have to. It's like everything else that student athletes have done. You just have to put one foot in front of the other and just keep going and working your way through it, because it's not easy for anybody.
Thanks, Mike. Sarah, do you have any final thoughts?
You're muted, Sarah.
Sarah, you're muted.
But I appreciate the compliment.
Thank y'all for having me. I'm so encouraged just by seeing all of your faces, and I've got more energy. I feel like I can go do something. I'm just really excited to see all of you. And, if you guys have any questions on the real estate development side, I'm an open book. I'm happy to connect with you guys anytime. But thank y'all just for having me on.
Thank you, Sarah. Linda, final thoughts?
Yeah, no, same for Sarah. Just, thanks for making the time tonight. You showed up, which is important. And I just reiterate, it's okay if you don't have all the answers right now. You have a great group of people around you, with James and Linda and Matt and so many folks that you have resources to figure it out. So just stay positive on it. And stay positive in this year too, because it is a crazy year, and I think everybody understands, the interviewers, the recruiting, everybody gets that it's a tough time. So don't be discouraged and stay positive.
Thanks, Linda. And finally, Taylor.
Just echoing what everyone else said, and also I would just like to add one more point about, I think this is just an important lesson of life, but it also relates to the professional world too. People you come across and people you encounter, they don't always remember everything you said, but they remember how you make them feel. And I think that really resonates in the professional world too. I think even with the colleagues that I have today, I try to invest in who they are as an individual, and to have connections in that space too, because I just think that takes you really far in your career. And I think that has been a successful thing for me thus far in just the 2.5 years that I've been working. I'm a people person, and I enjoy connecting with people. And I just think that's invaluable in general in the professional world. So I would just encourage all of you to show your true colors and be yourself, and smile at people and like really try to connect with people when it comes to like networking or just interviewing and just anything related to like the professional side of things. If you guys have any questions about banking or anything, or like want to talk to me about anything, please feel free to reach out to me. And I just want to say too, I'm really sad that all you guys are going through college during this time. It like really breaks my heart. But like everyone else said, we're going to get through it. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. So, and thank you all for having me. It was lovely 1 hour spent with all of you.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you all the panelists and everybody here tonight. I'm going to pass this back to James, Linda, and Matt.
Josh, thanks so much for moderating today. You did an amazing job. We really appreciate that. Students, as to echo everything our panelists have said, thank you for showing up. Thanks for your interest. We do have one more session, which is next Monday, and that's for advertising, marketing, sports, and entertainment in those industries. If you're interested at all, feel free to join us for that on Monday the 25th. But just thank you so much. And to our panelists, thanks for taking the time to spend the evening with our students, and students definitely take panelists up on their offers to stay in touch and to reach out. And it's crucial. And as Linda said, you know, it definitely is instrumental in opportunities that you're going to get down the line. Matt, James, any final thoughts?
We're a minute over, so super brief, but to our panelists, thank you as always for your time, for your advice, perspective, direction. It's an invaluable tool. And to our student athletes, credit you for showing up tonight. Could have been watching Netflix, could have been snoozing, you could have been doing other things, but you showed up, you took the hour to get better. And you know, these four individuals and a larger network behind them are here for you. So keep that in mind, and excited to get the spring semester off and running and see you guys compete. So thanks to everybody.